This recording will cover Chapter 6 in your textbook, Early Reading Strategies and Techniques. So again, another strategy and technique chapter, so make sure you are looking in the textbook because the authors go into a lot more detail than I can. So make sure that you are taking some time and looking through the textbook because I think there are a lot of really good strategies and techniques. I think I mentioned in Chapter 5, starting in Chapter 5 and kind of going towards the end of the textbook, it's a lot more strategies, right? We kind of covered some of the basics and the early special ed stuff at the beginning of the textbook, but now we're getting into the good stuff, if you will, and the parts that might be the most beneficial, hopefully, to all of you as you are going on to be teachers. Let me just move this just a little bit. Okay, sorry about the little extra thing, but that's okay. All right, so here's your objectives for Chapter 6. You're looking at the different models of reading that explain how children read, stages of reading, some common problems students with high incidence might encounter in early reading. You've probably seen some of them. You can probably identify some of them already. And again, your textbook goes a lot more in depth into some techniques and strategies for improving sight words, phonological awareness, word patterns, syllabication skills, syllabication, some people say it differently, and how reading skills can be incorporated into a lesson to improve the reading skills of students with HI. Okay, so again, I'm just going to touch on a few things, but I want to make sure that you go into the textbook and, go even deeper. Sorry, this is driving me crazy, people, crazy. I want, go into the textbook and go into more in depth. Okay, there we go. I'm a little happier with this. Okay, so a couple different models of reading that your textbook talks about. The bottom up model. So this is where young readers, excuse me, rely heavily on translating print to letter sounds to meaning as an approach to comprehending text. So really thinking about the phonics behind it and the phonological skills, right? Looking at those, okay, well, I know that there's print right here. I don't know what this says, but I'm going to say, M. I know that says, So that is how they're going to think about comprehending text kind of from the bottom up. So the top down is a little bit the opposite, right? This is teaching on a combination of decoding skills, sight words, and connected reading activities to gain meaning. So to me, this bottom up model sounds like kind of the old, phonics approach, right? Then this top down model kind of sounds a little more whole languagey, right? So I don't know if you've been around a while, but there were some of those terms, back when I was going to school, there were some of those terms. And then the interactive model is really a combination of both, to be honest, and making sure that the students are as engaged and are interacting with early reading skills all the time, constantly, right? All right, so some models of reading. So some common reading terms, Phonemes, I think we've talked about this a little bit. The smallest linguistic unit of speech that signals a difference in meaning. For example, boy, boys, right? When there's that S on the end, it means there's more than one. Okay, phonological awareness. This refers to breaking down or segmenting an unknown word into phonemes. The smallest linguistic unit of speech, right? And then blending those sounds back together to produce the word. Word attack. This should say attack. I was not the one who wrote this. It should be attack, not attach. So this is the ability to recognize a word by identifying its phonemes or word parts. So maybe you're, here is phonological awareness. You're looking at the smaller units, the phonemes, but then here you're really looking at the word. Okay, segmenting refers to breaking down a word into phonemes. For example, the word dish is segmented into the phonemes d, I, sh. Okay, so in that case, there are three different phonemes, right? D for the, right? So the word is dish, again, D-I-S-H. So the phonemes would be d, I, sh. So that S-H, stays together. Okay, so blending, if segmenting is taking it apart, blending is probably the opposite, right? Refers to combining phonemes to form a word. So, for example, the phonemes t, a, p, combine to make the word tap, T-A-P. And I'm only spelling it to make sure that you're hearing what I'm saying. So again, that blending, if we say, what word do you hear, what word can you make from these sounds or these phonemes? T, a, p. They have to blend those phonemes together to make the word tap, T-A-P. Okay, again, I'm only spelling it so you can hear clearly what I'm saying. Sight words are those high frequency words, those words that students can read automatically, words that appear frequently in print and are likely to appear in published print stories, such as some of your Basel readers. I am Sam, Sam I am, Pat the dog, whatever the Basel series is now. But those sight words are those high frequency words that we want our students to just look at and understand what they are. Okay, Basel Reading Series is a series of pre-planned, sequentially organized books that contain short passages or stories. Typically, sight words are introduced a few at a time in each story, and new ones are added in each successive story or, in each next story, resulting in a cumulative effect as the stories become more complex. So back in the day, I think it was like Dick and Jane or something like that. If you're on Starfall at all, they have a lot of Basel Reading Series. So I'm sure you've seen some of them. If you are in classrooms now, you probably have some Basel series out in your classrooms. Okay, some other things we want to think about: decoding skills, breaking down an unknown word into phonemes and syllables. So really looking at breaking things down again. Structural analysis. This is more sophisticated than decoding, refers to breaking down an unknown word into prefixes and suffixes, right? So kind of what's at the beginning of the word, what's at the end of the word, and then breaking down some of those larger words into syllables. Digraphs are I cannot talk today, y'all. Two letters that represent one phoneme. So an example, a consonant digraph, an example would be two letters create a single phoneme or unit, such as PH, like in the word phone, CH, SH, sh. We talked about that a second ago in dish, TH, I know you can't hear that one, and WH. Okay, those are our consonant digraphs. And our vowel digraphs are two letters that represent one phoneme, like AI, okay, as one, AY, OA, and EE. Okay, those are all vowel digraphs and consonant digraphs. Y'all, I am sorry. Okay, then we have diphthongs. This is the vowel sound cannot be represented by either sound, but forms a unique sound. And some examples would be AU, AW, OI, OY, and OU. Okay, so think about those. Those are your diphthongs. And then consonant blends and clusters. This is where each letter can be pronounced by saying each letter sound. So for example, BL, we would say bull, right? Blend, okay? STR in the word strong, let's say. CR, creek, right? And SPL, splash. Okay, so those are kind of your reading terms. Some stages of readings, stages of a reading. Pre-reading is really birth to age 6. And of course, these ages, especially for our students with high incidence disabilities, these stages might last a little longer, right? Pre-reading for maybe some of your more nonverbal or some of your more involved students, it might last a little longer, okay? So, keep these ages in mind, but again, knowing that kind of subject to change with your particular population. Okay, so stage 0 is pre-reading, stage 1 is initial reading or decoding stage, and, kind of grades 1 and 2, ages 6 and 7, but again, with some of your students, it might not be exactly 6 to 7. Oh, and then once they hit 7, boom, they're going to switch to stage 2. Not necessarily, right? So stage 2 is confirmation fluency on gluing from print. Okay, so kind of getting a little more into the word attacked skills and looking at reading more fluently. The next stage is stage 3, reading for learning. So, typically people say, oh, well, students learn to read first, right? And then all of a sudden it switches to they read to learn, or they're reading more for comprehension. Typically about grades 4-ish is where this kind of switches. But again, for some of your students, it might be a little later. And then multiple viewpoints. So high school students begin to read materials in which students must take another's perspective or multiple perspectives on topics and issues. Something like this, you would not do with 5-year-olds, right? Or you would not do with a 7-year-old with autism necessarily. And then stage 5 is really, it's ongoing, right? Even still for some of us today, construction and reconstruction, a worldview. So thinking about prior knowledge, multiple comprehension strategies, including, those metacognitive skills. So think about even when you're reading, how are you decoding, whether it's a textbook or whether it's for fun, or not decoding, excuse me, how are you understanding, how are you comprehending what you're reading? Okay, so some common reading problems for our kiddos. Some basic reading skills problem, there might be some phonological deficits. A phonological deficit hypothesis is a hypothesis that attributes a student's lack of reading development on specific deficits in the phonological language domain. So maybe they struggle with blending, maybe they struggle with segmenting, stuff like that. And then thinking about fluency and why they keep doing this, attach. People, proofread your work. Fluency and comprehension problems, they might struggle with those word attack skills, and it might take them a long time to get through a sentence or a passage because they have to break down every single word. So word attack skills, again, the ability, I think I mentioned this before, the ability to recognize a word and by identifying its phonemes or word parts. All right, so some progression of reading skills for this teaching reading skills. So again, this is where I really want you to look. Sorry if you're hearing that beep, it means I'm getting an email. This is where I really want you to look into the textbook and look at some of the activities and strategies and techniques that they provide you. Thinking about reading readiness. Okay, how are we going to get our little kiddos ready? Or how are we going to we have a 6-year-old that's never been to school before. How are we going to get them ready to read and do those pre-reading, get through that pre-reading stage. Okay, word patterns, again, looking at word patterns, also called word families. You may have heard of that, the AT family. Think of all the words you can make with at, bat, hat, fat, cat, mat, that, whatever, right? So thinking about stuff like that. Fluency. Ultimately, we want our students to be fluent readers, but also to understand what they're reading. It doesn't matter if they can read 200 words. I had a student, when I taught in Charleston, he could read about 200 words per minute, not even kidding. Didn't understand a word of what he read. So does that mean he's a good reader? No, not really. Yeah, he could read fluently, but he didn't understand it because he was reading so quickly. So we want to make sure that students are also learning strategies, highlighting, note-taking, stuff like that, so they can read to understand text. Okay, some other strategies, teaching reading skills, reading readiness, again, sight word approach, teaching sight words, phonological awareness, blending, segmenting activities, Elkonin boxes or Elkonin boxes. I think I talked about that in chapter 5. However you want to pronounce it, word family activities, word sorts. I had one book, it was called, what was it called? It's called like Word Family Wheels, I think. And so it was like a wheel, a paper wheel that you would fasten together with paper fasteners, or is that what they're called? Like those brass fasteners. And so on the inner wheel, it would be, the initial sound, b, k, whatever. And then the outer wheel would be whatever word family you were working on. So they could spin the wheels and make some words. So that was actually pretty cool. Okay, some other activities. Wilson Reading System, some of you might know this one. What's the other one? Orton Gillingham. Some schools are using that. I know Florence 1 around here uses Orton Gillingham, very scripted. I used to use Reading Mastery when I was a special ed teacher, but you want to think about some of these teaching word patterns, syllabication to students with high incidence disabilities, some recommended reading skills. Again, those pre-reading, just knowing how to hold a book, knowing how to work through a book from, left to right, from start to finish. Story structure, finding main ideas, that comes later. Obviously, we want to start with this stuff first for our little kiddos, and then you'll get more into more in depth. Okay, reading readiness activities, place names on seats, desks, or other objects, have them recognize their name. Oh, where's your cubby? I know a lot of early childhood special ed programs will do, a name associated with a symbol. So they start to associate, oh, my name and the balloons go together. If I can't read my name, I can at least find the balloon. That's what we used to do in one of the classrooms where I worked. Use predictable stories, allow them to help you finish the story or finish a sentence. Read decodable books, stuff like this. Read picture books, have adults read stories, bring in a guest reader. Kids love that, right? It doesn't matter what kind of kid you are. They like somebody to come in and read. If you're in Florence, call me up. I'll come read. Some phonological awareness activities, rhyme time. I've actually done something with this with my undergrads when I was talking about phonological awareness. There's a cute one about stand up and tap your head. Now lay down and go to bed or whatever. Clapping words and phonemes, at. the ag, right? Whatever. Rubber band blending, you can use some rubber bands, and then just putting it all together, using some basal reading series and looking at the research evidence that's out there. So again, I did not go into much detail, but make sure you go into your textbook, and that is the end for chapter 6.